Thank you. It is an absolute pleasure. I appreciate it.
All right. Now, the first topic I'd like to discuss is just a little bit, if you could give us a little bit about your background in finance.
Absolutely. Again, my name is David Modell. I'm currently with the team at PortfolioWealthGlobal.com, which I'm very proud to be part of. I was approached by many newsletters over the past couple of years, but I chose Portfolio Wealth Global. First of all, I agree with the philosophy and standpoint of Mr. Tom Beck, who is the founder. He became a real estate millionaire at age 33, and he's been putting out a free newsletter on the website that people can check out right there on the homepage. And it's got amazing research, award-winning in 2017 best newsletter for the cryptocurrency calls. For one thing, at Portfolio Wealth Global, we called Ethereum at 35. We called Litecoin at 25, Cardano at 4 cents, and we continue to make these calls that people can benefit from. And also we have, and Tom Beck has an overriding philosophy, which is that the government and the central banks might not have our best interests at heart as investors and just as citizens, and that we really have to educate ourselves and do our own due diligence. And that's why I'm so proud to put out these reports with Portfolio Wealth Global.
Now, the first topic I'd like to discuss is cryptocurrencies. You mentioned a bit about that. Regarding specifically Bitcoin, and I guess other cryptocurrencies like you mentioned, Ethereum, do you think the bull market is over, or are there still gains ahead?
Yeah, I believe there are still gains ahead, but you have to be selective with what you buy. There's so many cryptocurrencies out there. But generally speaking, when Bitcoin and Ethereum and Litecoin lead, others tend to follow. There are a number of reasons why I believe that cryptocurrencies will continue to be bullish, even though they did have a rather large drawdown recently. First of all, when Wall Street begins to divert clients' funds into cryptocurrencies, I believe that will give Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies a nice boost. Also, when central banks begin to use Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies for their own reserves, I believe that'll give it a boost. And perhaps the greatest boost will come when the technology comes along that is able to connect all of the various blockchains. That'll be huge. When, for example, the blockchain for Bitcoin, the blockchain for Ethereum, Litecoin, Cardano, Dash, and so forth, when all those individual blockchains can be interconnected, when that technology comes along, I think that'll be a huge bullish source of momentum for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And actually at Portfolio Wealth Global, we do happen to have a report if people would like to check it out. It's at portfoliowealthglobal.com/rocket. That's /rocket. And I recommend people check out Tom Beck's report there. Again, we've had 5 baggers and 10 baggers before, huge gains, and we'll continue to do that in the future.
Now, can you expand a little bit about why exactly you see where you see cryptocurrencies playing a role in the financial system in the future? I mean, where you seem bullish on them, but what will their role actually be?
Sure. Well, the role is basically blockchain based. It's based on the technology. If we believe in blockchain as a technology, which I do, then we should be bullish on the cryptocurrencies, which are based on that blockchain. Also, the value of it is that, it might not have the store of value that gold, silver, and other commodities do, precious metals do, but they are so much better when it comes to things like transactions. Why does a wire transfer still take, for me, it still takes up to 5 days for traditional banking to complete a wire transfer? So things like that can be so much, faster and more efficient on the blockchain. Again, when the technology catches up to the potential there. I've seen large companies like Bank of America, IBM, PayPal, JP Morgan writing blockchain patents. I believe this will provide more legitimacy to the cryptocurrency space as a whole. And when you hear about Bill Gates and various banks expressing interest in Ripple, for example, when we see people of that stature and institutions of that stature believing in cryptocurrencies. Again, when they have that backing, when they have legitimacy, I believe that blockchain will flourish, and I believe that people who invest correctly and nimbly in the cryptocurrency market will prosper.
Now, I've heard about Bitcoin and a couple problems with it. For example, like it using up so much energy. Some people make the argument it couldn't really become a really big thing in the financial system because it takes up so much energy. Do you buy that argument? And also, do other cryptocurrencies also have that problem?
Yeah, I mean, they all have the energy consumption issue, but again, the technology has to catch up. Bitcoin came out in 2009 and was hardly even heard of at that time. So these are all new technologies. I think of it kind of like I think of the internet back in the late 90s or even the mid 90s is actually more accurate to where we are now with the cryptocurrencies. And so, yeah, the internet was, let's say back in 1995, very clunky and very inefficient, and there were people who thought, well, this is not going to take off, and of course they were wrong. So right now, I believe we're in that upstart phase, the inchoate phase of cryptocurrencies. Yes, there is a lot of consumption of energy, but so does traditional banking. That you think they don't have a lot of waste and unnecessary resources being used there as well. I'm looking forward to when blockchain becomes a watchword, not only among people in finance, such as yourself and myself, but among the common, people who don't even do a lot of financial transactions and people who don't even invest. When they've heard of blockchain, the problem is by then it might be a little bit too late. You know, the old saying, by the time the shoe shine boy, as they used to say, is recommending something, might be a little bit too late by then. And so at Portfolio Wealth Global, we believe in getting into things early before everybody else is talking about it. And so I'm looking to the future for this one.
Now, as we look just last week, we saw the introduction of the petro yuan. There was a lot of news about this. We talked about this on my channel months ago that China was going to do this, and they finally did. They introduced the yuan-denominated oil futures contract.
Yep.
Now, what is your perspective on this, and kind of tying this into cryptocurrencies? How does cryptocurrencies relate to the ongoing currency war that's happening with the destruction of the petrodollar?
Yeah. Well, just to give a little bit of background, recently China became the #1 importer of crude oil. Used to be the United States. And so they're a major player. And I'm sure that Xi Jinping and the Chinese government would love to see the petro yuan replace the petrodollar as the standard for purchasing, not only oil but other commodities as well. And they would love to see the U.S. dollar be replaced as the world reserve currency. Right now, Brent futures are mostly traded. They're traded in London as Brent futures. They're WTI, West Texas Intermediate futures, traded in New York. They would love to see that moved to China and for China to be the hub of activity there. In the short term, I don't see this as a big mover, but in the long term, the dollar could certainly be replaced at some point in the intermediate to long term as a world reserve currency. This could be a first step in that direction. It might be replaced not necessarily by the yuan, might be by the euro. Who knows? It could be replaced by cryptocurrencies at some point. Cryptocurrencies are becoming part of the popular vernacular. It's not happening quickly, but I believe that it won't be long before we see people making purchases on Amazon, Target, Walmart, that kind of thing with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Once that happens, then I can only imagine that the dollar, which has lost so much of its value, the U.S. dollar lost 10% of its value in 2017 alone. there's a bill going through Congress right now, H.R. 5404. Elijah, I'm sure you're well aware of this one, and in which Congress fully admits that inflation has ravaged the dollar. They don't put it in those words, but that's what's going on. And so when these strong competitors, such as Bitcoin, such as the yuan, such as the euro, are catching up and are gaining more, let's say, more trust than the U.S. government-backed dollar has had since we took it off the gold standard, or Nixon took it off the gold standard back in 1971, we're going to see even further decline in the dollar. Look at any dollar chart compared to pretty much any major currency. It's been bloodshed, and I believe it will continue to be, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it replaced fairly soon, sooner rather than later.
Now, with respect to the declining dollar, do you think this is being done on purpose by Trump, trying to weaken the currency?
That would be hard to say and hard to prove. A lot of things are hard to prove. But Trump has perhaps made indirect statements about this. But again, I don't want to parse what he's said. The fact is, just look at what's going on. Currently the dollar is at a 3-year low, just seems to keep getting worse. Inflation, I believe, will reach between 4% and 7%, not in the long term, but in the near term, meaning within either this year or next year. Wouldn't surprise me at all. That's going to ravage the dollar. And all this is good for precious metals, by the way, which is where I like to put some of my funds. I certainly don't believe cash is going to – I don't believe it ever was king, maybe a long time ago when we were on the gold standard perhaps. But I don't believe cash is king right now. Again, inflation, bond yields, which are normalizing, and just the continued devaluation of the dollar. And it almost doesn't matter who is in charge, who's the president, or, it used to be Janet Yellen, and now it's Jerome Powell in the Fed. But as we change regimes, it almost doesn't matter, because no matter who's in charge, the dollar is just, as long as the government keeps printing money, the dollar's value is just going down and down and down. So what we need is to find alternative investments, because I don't believe that the promise of the government that we will continue to have Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, pension funds, that they'll all be solvent within the next few years. I don't believe any of that. So in order to find alternative investments, we have a couple of reports actually at Portfolio Wealth Global. If you go to portfoliowealthglobal.com/cash flow. And then there's another one, portfoliowealthglobal.com/bonds. That's /cash flow and /bonds. Those are two separate reports by Tom Beck, the founder at portfoliowealthglobal.com, as a way to let you, the audience, know what's going on with the bond market, what's going on with the U.S. dollar, and how you can get an 8 to 12% yield potentially much more safely and effectively, and without having to count on the promise of the government. And we all know, retirees and investors and savers all know how that's been turning out so far.
Now, still on the topic of the U.S. dollar, do you think it could lose its reserve currency within a decade? And what timeline do you see for the petro yuan, or the petrodollar actually dying and being replaced, for example, with the petro yuan?
Yeah, 10 years, I don't even think it'll take that long, to be honest with you. Again, the value of any currency is based on trust in that government and trust in that economy. All right. Yes, right now, the futures trading, which has been opened up recently to both domestic and international futures traders in China for the petro yuan, has been opened up. That has not had, I don't believe that will continue to have a massive short-term effect. I don't believe it's going to cut into the petrodollar in the short term. But I tend to think long term. I like to think about what's going to happen in the next few years beyond 2018. I don't think it'll take 10 years. I don't believe it'll take a decade to see the decline of not only the petrodollar, but just the dollar's hegemony around the world, because the trust just is not there. the trust worldwide, and the trust from the American people who deserve better than to have their 401ks, 403bs, and IRAs decimated for people who deserve to have their dollar matter, their dollar worth something. It's just not what it used to be. Again, check out HR 5404, where the U.S. Congress readily admits that the dollar, due to inflation, due to normalizing of monetary policy, this great big experiment of zero interest rate policy, and in some regions of the world, negative interest rate policies that we've had since 2008, it has not benefited anybody except perhaps people at the very, very top. For the rest of us, we need to self-educate, and we need to be aware that there are other better investments out there. No, I don't think it'll take 10 years. I think it'll happen sooner rather than later.
Now, getting into more about precious metals, what is your perspective on the gold-silver ratio, and do you prefer silver to gold, or what is your preference there?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. As you know, Elijah, the gold-silver ratio recently went above 80. Into the low 80s, which has only happened 4 times since Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971. It's a rare thing. And I believe in precious metals. I like the physical stuff. So if you have gold and silver, what tends to happen after the gold-silver ratio gets that high is that it tends to mean revert at some point. I'm not saying tomorrow, I'm not saying next week, but at some point it tends to come back to its mean or median, which is around 50 or so. And in that case, people might consider lightening up on their gold holdings and perhaps rebalancing to their silver holdings. That's one way to play it. There are a number of ways to play this. Also, I'm sure you're aware that in terms of seasonality, this is as good a time as any to enter into precious metals such as gold and silver. And you mentioned silver as do I have a preference over gold? Generally, no. I think of silver as gold's more volatile little brother. Okay, so it is a bigger mover. But that's not better or worse. I'm just saying right now it may be a more favorable thing to rebalance into if somebody is going to weigh gold against silver at the moment because of the possible mean reversion in the coming months and years. And also, I'm sure you're aware of this, that gold and silver, precious metals in general, in terms of seasonality, they tend to rise in the last 3 months of the year and peak at the very end of December. So we're still fairly early in the year. We're barely into the second quarter of 2018. It's as good a time as any to start making some gold and silver plays. Again, silver only if you don't mind the volatility that could potentially come with that. And at PortfolioWealthGlobal.com, we do have a report. It's free on the website, PortfolioWealthGlobal.com/gold playbook. That's /gold playbook. Tom Beck has written a report showing some different ways to play gold and precious metals generally, and I really like that report a lot.
Now, what is your perspective on other asset classes right now? For example, stocks. We recently saw a peak back in January for the stock market. If you look at the Dow, we saw a correction, and then we saw a slightly lower low on the Dow made recently, and now we're rallying again. It seems like, though, we're in a downtrend. What is your perspective?
Yeah, well, today's market is certainly in a downtrend, and we've generally been in a downtrend since February. The VIX has shot up considerably. The S&P 500, all the major indices, the Qs, as they say, or the NASDAQ, the Dow, they're all down, and it's a much more volatile environment right now. 2016, 2017 was so easy for buy and holders, and for swing traders as well. It's just been a gradual decline with barely any volatility. The VIX below 9 several times in 2016, 2017. Just unprecedented lack of volatility. Now we have these daily 1% to 2% moves in the S&P 500. That's not normal. So I believe risk off is the watchword right now. And it wouldn't surprise me at all to see a major market correction happening. Not the 10%er that we got a month ago. That's not even what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a real correction. People who were not investing or trading back in 2008 or 2000 probably have no idea what that feels like. It is scary. And that's why I recommend getting into alternative investments. This may not be the best time just to park your money in the indexes. So I see a rocky road ahead for 2018 in the world of stocks.
Now, the interesting thing is that bull markets, it seems like, end with euphoria, but it doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like, at least right now, as we're experiencing this little correction, there's much of that. Do you think they're going to continue to rally before they pull back significantly again?
Yeah, that certainly could happen. It wouldn't surprise me. That last burst of euphoria, many people thought January was it, when after a massive run in January of 2018, the S&P 500 and all the indices shot up even more, then corrected. And right now, we're pretty much losing all the gains in the Dow from 2018 so far. Perhaps that was the last gasp. But it's not unusual to see one more head fake, one more opportunity for those in charge to sucker in, to pull in the average investor, which is really unfortunate because retirees, savers, they're really getting the raw deal when it comes to this. And so that's why Portfolio Wealth Global, we're always looking for not only knowledge and information to spread in terms of what's really going on in the world of investing, but also to give people access to alternative ways to make consistent safer income rather than take your chances with the stock market. I mean, if the whole thing comes down in 2018 and somebody is near retirement, what's going to happen to them? Well, I don't think that the central banks care. I don't think the government's going to help you out too much if that happens. So you got to have access to that research, and that's why I'm so proud to be part of a team that provides that.
All right. Well, David Modell, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we let you go, did you want to share with the viewers any last thoughts you had and where they can find you online?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I'm very proud to be part of your program. Everybody needs to, tune into Elijah every day. I mean, you're a main source for me, not an alternative source of news and what's going on in the world. And we certainly are glad to have Portfolio Wealth Global as a main source as well. I hope that everybody will check it out. So you can find me over there, and I'll be anywhere on the web that people are looking for information that cannot be found from the mainstream media. So thank you so much for bringing me on. I appreciate it today.
All right. Thank you so much. Contagion and childhood epidemics, autism, over-vaccination, and mercury. You know that serious diseases can pose grave risks. But what about the important concerns over the safety, health risks, and effectiveness of the vaccines themselves? Click here to see former FDA vaccine researcher Dr. Jay Nielsen, MD, tackle the tough questions on the virtues and real dangers of vaccines, so you can decide what's the right course for you and your family.